This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. The black crocodile stopped 3 feet away from him, closed its eyes, and stopped moving. Yunxiao stretched out his right hand, and the divine realm tablet slowly rose from the ground and held in his hand. Then, he said to the crocodile, "Come in." The crocodile still did not move. The atmosphere between the two suddenly turned cold. Yunxiao's eyes were as clear as water as he looked at the crocodile quietly, as if waiting for its reaction. This thing was an elemental spirit in the first place. It was a part of the ceiling formation in outer space and had existed for countless years. In the Battle of Songhua Yangcheng, half of the complete immemorial astral wind spirit had been cut off by Ding Shan, and the other half, which had suffered a great drop in strength, had been carried by the devil master Di Jun. After Di Jun's death, he followed Yunxiao in the dragon transformation pool in the burial land. During this period, it had been refined by Yunxiao many times, and it had almost completely fused with the Phoenix Divine Flame, producing a new form and becoming one of Yunxiao's ultimate killing moves, the Firestorm Wheels, whose power was not even inferior to a complete spirit transformation. But, as its strength continued to improve, its intelligence was slowly awakening, and it began to develop some self-resistance against Yunxiao's random commands. Now that it had fused with the body made of Tianji Heizi and obtained more power, its resistance was becoming more and more obvious. The crocodile suddenly opened its eyes, and a fierce light burst out of them. It stared at the Divine Realm tablet, its eyes full of resistance and a trace of fear. Although it wasn't very intelligent, it understood that once it entered the Divine Realm tablet, its life and death would be no longer in its control. Yunxiao's cold eyes narrowed, and a sunny smile appeared on his face as he said softly, "Be good, come here." The crocodile's body trembled as it propped itself up on its short limbs and took a step back, staring vigilantly at Yunxiao. His pitch-black body began to change, and balls of flames burned out of his body. In an instant, his entire body turned light red, and small balls of immemorial astral winds flew out from under his 4 limbs, as if he was stepping on the wind and clouds. Yunxiao's face finally turned cold as he said, "Come in." Roar. The crocodile roared loudly, and the fierce light in its eyes intensified. Its entire body rose into the air, and it instantly pounced. Yunxiao's face flickered, and he thought to himself, "So fast." His body instantly turned golden as he punched out with the Vajra fist. Boom. The fist radiance hit the crocodile's body, and a sharp pain came from his arm. The fist power of the imperishable golden body was directly broken by the impact. Seeing that it had succeeded, the crocodile's ferocity flared up. It roared and opened its mouth to bite down, trying to swallow Yunxiao's entire body. "Bite your sister." Yunxiao roared as he picked up the hammer in his left hand and smashed it down. A bolt of lightning struck the man's mouth and into his body. Howl. An explosion came from the crocodile's body, and it closed its mouth in pain. Yunxiao's eyes turned cold as he teleported right in front of it. In the next moment, he appeared at the top of the secret chamber. With a casual wave of his hand, more than 10 Northern Heaven Cold Star swords shot down. Clang. 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 The swords were stuck on the sides of the crocodile, falling close to its body, like a prison that trapped it. Yunxiao performed incantation gestures with both hands and cast out seals. An ocean of sword chi and a sword talisman emerged on the sword diagram, pressing down on the crocodile. The crocodile raised its head and howled loudly. Its pitch-black body began to turn red, and the terrifying power of flames shot out, trying to blast the sword picture away. Humph, foolish. Yunxiao snorted coldly as he changed the seal in his hand. The pattern of a true spirit fire phoenix emerged between his eyebrows, and an ancient cry came faintly. The flames on the crocodile's body suddenly condensed and pounced back out of its control, directly blasting into its black body, pressing it down and making it struggle with all its might. "I'm only lending you the flame. Do you really think it's yours?" With a sneer, Yunxiao raised his hand, and the cold sword of ice appeared above his palm, which then turned into a beam of light and shot down. With a loud clang, the long sword struck the crocodile's constantly wagging tail. It sank into the ground and nailed the crocodile's entire body like a nail. There was a look of fear in the crocodile's eyes. Its tail had been pierced by a sharp sword, and it was trapped in a sword array. There was also a sword talisman on its body, and the flames in its body were destroying it uncontrollably. It suddenly panicked and opened its mouth to beg for mercy. What? Yunxiao sneered. Are you convinced? The crocodile nodded repeatedly, its eyes full of pleading. Yunxiao's eyes flickered. Without saying a word, he reached out and took back the cold sword, frost, and the many northern heaven cold star swords. The crocodile shook its tail a few times and stopped shaking. Suddenly, its figure flickered and disappeared from where it was, then reappeared on Yunxiao's body at a speed that was hard to catch, roaring and biting at his neck. You're courting death. Die. Yunxiao cried out coldly as he pointed his finger with a sword incantation, and a cold beam of light slashed out. Although Tianhuan Heizi's material was strong, the sharpness of the ice sword could break through almost everything. With one slash, it made an ear-piercing sound and directly split the crocodile into two. Roar! 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 The crocodile roared a few times as the power of the primordial astral wind whirled out and disintegrated its body, turning it into countless tiny black particles, each of which contained extremely high energy. Then, they smashed toward Yunxiao. A cold look appeared on Yunxiao's face as his eyes suddenly turned blood red and he opened the power of the moon pupil. A burst of spiritual power blasted out, and the whole space spun, changing the world in an instant. The countless particles hit nothing but air, and they could not find Yunxiao. The countless particles instantly panicked and flew around aimlessly in the dark endless space like a swarm of bees. Stupid thing, you've been following me for so long, do you still not understand how powerful I am? Yunxiao's voice came slowly, and a blood moon appeared in the sky. It opened like an eye and stared at the mass of particles full of violent power. The moment the particles saw the blood moon appear, they immediately flew over, wanting to bombard him. Not only did each particle carry the power of fire, but they also had the power of astral wind. They formed a particle storm and were extremely fast, almost as fast as the lightning escape technique. However, no matter how they rode the wind, the distance to the blood moon never changed, and they could never reach it. A sneer flickered in the moon-like eyes as Yunxiao's voice came faintly. It's good that the violence and restlessness in your personality burst out now. I can suppress you completely and prevent any future troubles. The pupils of the blood moon narrowed, and tens of thousands of rays of light gathered around it. A strange golden mark appeared and directly fell from the sky. Boom! With a loud bang, the mark swept through the particle storm. Every particle trembled violently under the power of the mark and finally condensed back into the form of a crocodile. All of the berserk energy and the golden sigil suddenly disappeared, and the crocodile's face turned dull, as if it had suddenly lost its spirit. In the end, it slowly closed its eyes and fell uncontrollably from the endless void. The moon pupil slowly closed, the world changed, and he returned to the secret room. Bang! The black crocodile's body fell to the ground, creating a huge pit. At this moment, a golden symbol was flashing continuously in its mind, as if it was imprinted in a formation. This was a kind of slave mark on the soul, which directly blasted into the spiritual altar and sea of consciousness. Once the thought of rebellion was born, it would be immediately suppressed. The demonic dragon's eyes were filled with pity as he said, "I've finally forced you to use the slave imprint. This kind of mark will have no effect as long as it doesn't show any signs of betrayal," Yunxiao said indifferently. "Moreover, as long as I recover my strength to the peak of my previous life, I will remove it for him. At that time, I don't need to worry about his betrayal." Yes, the demon dragon nodded. "I believe that even Ao Chongkong won't be a match for you when you recover to the peak of 9 stars martial sovereign. We don't have to wait too long for that day." "I hope so," Yunxiao said casually. With a flash of light between his eyebrows, he put the crocodile into the Divine Realm tablet. At this moment, the entire secret room was full of potholes, but it did not collapse. It was considered unusually strong. "Are you really going to extract the Poseidon's blood from that girl?" the demonic dragon asked in a deep voice. Yunxiao's eyes narrowed, and his face changed slightly as he said slowly, "What do you think?" The demonic dragon was silent for a moment before he said, "The blood of the Sea Emperor is good, but have you forgotten what happened back then? At that time, you were 100 times stronger than you are now, but you almost lost your life on the East Sea. I'm afraid that if you touch that girl, you'll never be able to return to the continent." With his hands clasped behind his back, Yunxiao was lost in thought as he paced back and forth in the secret chamber, his face constantly flashing with a struggling look. "You had a reason to get the Poseidon's blood back then," the demonic dragon said again. "But you don't have that reason anymore. I suggest you don't act rashly." Yunxiao's pupils constricted, as if he had recalled something from the past. The doubts in his eyes were instantly swept away as he said firmly, "I also have a reason to seize the Poseidon's blood now." "You did it to save people back then, but what about now?" The demonic dragon was stunned. "It's completely unnecessary if it's only to increase your strength. With your current state and cultivation speed, you'll be able to return to your peak in 10 years at most." A cold gleam flashed in Yunxiao's eyes as he said, "My reason now is to kill." "Kill?" The demonic dragon's eyes were filled with confusion. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. His body trembled and he cried out, "Don't tell me it's because of." "Not bad." The killing intent on Yunxiao's face grew stronger and stronger as he said coldly, "Neptune's bloodline inheritance has the ability to see through all things the eye of truth, which can see through all illusions. If I can obtain the eye of truth, then I'll have more than enough confidence to kill Tianshui." The demonic dragon fell silent. In this world, in terms of mental energy attacks and illusionary techniques, the only one who could cause this man to feel fear and dread was Tianshui, who had walked out of the depths of the world. On the other hand, Tianshui had killed 2 of his good friends in a row. This was already an irreconcilable enmity between them. Sooner or later, there would be a life and death battle between the 2 of them, and only one of them could survive. The secret chamber fell silent all of a sudden. Yunxiao seemed to be lost in his memories, and the look on his face kept changing. "But with your current strength, snatching the Poseidon's blood will only lead to your death." The demonic dragon tried to stop him. Yunxiao's eyes were also filled with struggle as he said in an irritated tone, "But if I don't take it from this girl now, should I wait until her bloodline power is complete, or go to the Ocean Emperor Palace to take it? Her bloodline is still far from the phenomenal success stage," the demon dragon said. "If it's not, you'll have to pay a huge price to nurture it. Why don't you wait until you've recovered the power of your previous life before looking for this girl? You were able to get her in your previous life, so now that you have so many trump cards, what do you have to be afraid of?" "It was a coincidence in my previous life," Yunxiao said with a wry smile. "It's not like you don't know that. Even so, I almost lost my life. If I miss this opportunity, I'm afraid I'll miss it for the rest of my life." The demon dragon pondered and said, "That's right, that little girl seems to be looking for someone with fire-type magical powers. The person mentioned in Duanmu Yuyu's divination should be you, right? Perhaps this is a way to obtain the Poseidon's blood." Yunxiao frowned and asked in confusion, "Let's not talk about what that girl wants the fire god art for. What do you think about divination?" If he could predict what had already happened, I would still believe it, but to be able to predict something that has yet to happen, isn't that a little too incredible? The demon dragon said, "This should not be a problem for you. The power of divination is just the power of the rules of this world. The past, present, and future are all within the flow of time. If Duanmu Yuyu can really enter the torrent of time, then it would not be surprising to see the past and the future." "Yes." Yunxiao nodded and said, "I follow the path of fate, but my fate is not in the hands of heaven. I'll think about the Ocean Emperor's bloodline for now and see why that little girl wants the divine flame." After making up his mind, he suddenly made a grabbing motion with his spiritual sense and a jade token flew into his palm. It was the one that Liao Yongbing had used to send the message. He scanned it with his divine sense and found that 3 days had passed. Liao Yongbing actually recognized Zhao Wenjuan. This is interesting. The demon dragon and Yunxiao's souls merged into one, and they also received the information in the jade token. "Zhao Wenjuan is a human," Yunxiao murmured. If he had gone to sea in his early years, he might have come from Haitian town. It's not surprising that Liao Yongbing recognized him. He pondered for a moment, then opened the door of the secret room and walked out. Yunxiao's divine sense swept through the space. Many warriors had entered seclusion, but there were only 20 or 30 of them, and the rest were no longer in the space. He then left the profound artifact space and started to wander around the Xiankong Island. The entire island was in the shape of a heart, and the rows of buildings were in the center of the island. It suddenly became lively, and people came and went, like a vegetable market. Young Master Yunxiao. Suddenly, a voice called out, and a ray of light flickered in space. Zhao Wenjuan immediately appeared in front of him, his eyes smiling. Young Master has come out of seclusion? I've just come out, and I've already run into you, Mr. Wenjuan, Yunxiao said with a smile. What a coincidence. Zhao Wenjuan's face turned red. He knew that the other party had seen through his surveillance, but he didn't mind. He casually said, the island is only the size of a palm. What's there to be coincidental about? On the other hand, young Master Yunxiao has been in seclusion for 3 days. I'm sure you've gained a lot, right? He blinked his eyes, as if he was implying something. Yunxiao laughed and said, it's all right. I wonder how Mo Sha is doing now. Zhao Wenjuan smiled bitterly and said, young Master Yunxiao sure is comfortable. He took away someone else's intrinsic mystic artifact. Mo Sha's injuries had already stabilized, but he was still unconscious. The most fatal thing was that his cultivation had dropped by a few minor realms, and it would be difficult for him to make any further progress in the future. After Princess Shui Xian found out about the situation, she wanted to kill you several times, but we stopped her. Yunxiao sneered and said, Mr. Wenjuan, you'd better not stop her. Let that little girl come over. I can take her blood, and you know what I mean. Zhao Wenjuan was so scared that his entire body trembled. His face was pale as he said in horror, young Master Yunxiao, don't you gossip. It's already a great sin for you to say that you want to take the Poseidon blood. If you continue to talk nonsense like this, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for you to walk out of this sea. Yunxiao smiled and changed the subject. Mr. Wenjuan is a member of my clan, why would he stay on this unknown island? Zhao Wenjuan smiled and said, everyone has their own path. It's hard to explain in a few words. I think it's better for me to bring young Master Yunxiao around the Xiankong Islands market. It only opens once every 5 years, and it's the rarest. Seeing that he was not willing to tell him, Yunxiao did not force him. He nodded and said, that's good too. I also want to know how this so-called dazzling treasure meet will turn out. Zhao Wenjuan laughed, the dazzling treasure meet is actually similar to the mainland's high-level auctions. Other than the Xiankong Island hosting and taking out some treasures, most people bring their own treasures to the auction. There were still 10 days before the grand meeting, and all the participants had spontaneously formed a market to conduct all kinds of private transactions. The ocean is rich in resources, but profound-level weapons are rare. Even a storage ring can be sold for a good price. Young Master Yunxiao, don't miss this opportunity to make a fortune. It's a pity that I'm poor, Yunxiao said indifferently. Why don't you give me a few profound-level weapons, Mr. Wenjuan, so I can make a fortune? Young Master Yunxiao, you must be joking, Zhao Wenjuan laughed. The two of them flew down from the sky and headed towards the bustling market. The size was similar to that of the human race's market, but the people who were communicating were strange-looking members of the sea race. Moreover, each of them was quite strong, and they faintly emitted a surging power. The two humans also attracted the attention of the other sea race members. All of them had curious looks on their faces. Some of the sea race members had never been on the continent in their entire lives, so they had never seen humans. However, it was fortunate that many of the cultivators who had gone out to sea with them were also among them. These sea race people were more or less used to having humans in and out of the sea, and they slowly got used to it. Hey, human. I have some good stuff here, so I'm here to take a look. A blue-colored muscular sea tribe member by the side of the road roared with a deep voice. His 2 orange-sized eyes were like beans that emitted a green light. He pointed at his stall, and seeing that he had attracted the attention of two people, he hurriedly picked up a watermelon-like crystal and held it in his hand. This is a 10,000-year-old green crystal melon. It contains the essence of the East Sea. If you practice water-type divine arts, it will have unexpected effects. The 10,000-year-old jade crystal melon was completely transparent, and it constantly reflected a jade green light. It really looked like a watermelon, with a trace of essence chi flowing inside. Yunxiao looked surprised as he said, "A crystal melon from an underwater spirit vein?" He knew that there were some places in the four seas with extremely rich spiritual veins that could bear wild fruits like the fertile soil on the land, and at the bottom of the sea, crystal melons that were full of various energies could be formed by absorbing the chi of the spiritual veins. They were considered an extremely rare natural treasure. That's right. It's a 10,000-year-old herb. It contains the essence of the East Sea. When the Sea Clan man saw Yunxiao's surprised look, his interest was piqued, and he began to explain, there are no more than 10 watermelons in the entire Eastern Sea. It's the most precious treasure for water-type martial cultivators. Yunxiao had never seen such a strange object before. After carefully observing it, he said, "This is my first time here, I wonder how I can trade for this." The Sea Tribe cultivator's bean-like eyes lit up and he said, "You're a human, right? The friendship between the two clans will last forever. If you give me a top 8th tier profound armament, then you can take it." Yunxiao's forehead was covered in sweat as he thought to himself, there are not many people among the sea race who are as eloquent as you. If this kind of thing was placed on the continent, it would definitely be worth the price of a 9th tier profound armament. However, it was his first time here and he was afraid of being scammed. Thus, he was more careful and looked at Zhao Wenjuan. Zhao Wenjuan had a smile on his face, and the light in his eyes flickered slightly. Yunxiao immediately understood. He put away his curiosity and turned to leave. Hey, don't go. 8th tier middle level profound armament will do, there's no need to use the top grade. When the seaman saw that Yunxiao was not buying it, he immediately grew anxious and chased after him with the crystal melon in his arms. This thing is indeed magical, Yunxiao said with a smile. But I'm not a water elemental cultivator, so it won't be of much use to me. The marine race expert's face revealed a look of disappointment as he hurriedly said, "This thing is definitely rare on your continent. You can take it back and sell it to water element warriors to make a lot of money." When he saw Yunxiao still hesitating, he gritted his teeth and said, 8th tier initial level profound armament will do, as long as it's 8th tier, I'll sell it. The price will definitely not be lower than this. Yunxiao looked at Zhao Wenjuan again, and the oceanic species expert hurriedly glared at him and encouraged him, afraid that he would say something. Zhao Wenjuan smiled slightly and did not say a word. All right, Yunxiao said. I'll take this melon. The seaman was overjoyed, and as if he was afraid that Yunxiao would go back on his words, he stuffed the crystal melon into his hand and said excitedly, I hope to have a heavy attack type 8th tier profound armament. Young Master Yunxiao, Zhao Wenjuan said. The deal only requires an 8th tier mystic artifact. You can give it to me as you wish. Even an 8th ranked storage ring would meet the requirements. You shut up. The marine race expert glared at him and raised his fist as he roared, the rules of Xiankong Island state that no one is allowed to interrupt the trade. Zhao Wenjuan said coldly, when did I interrupt your transaction? I'm just reminding my friend that the bargaining chip is only an 8th tier initial level profound armament. Yunxiao casually took out an 8th tier sword and handed it over. I only have one long sword here, what do you think? That marine race expert was currently glaring angrily at Zhao Wenjuan, as if he wanted to remember his appearance and settle the score with him in the future. When he turned his head and saw that treasured sword, his eyes suddenly burst with green light. He snatched it over and said in wild joy, 8th tier middle level profound armament? All right, deal. Although they were both 8th tier profound armaments, but elementary and middle tier were two different concepts, and the price difference was 108,000 miles. The marine race expert played with the sword excitedly for a while. After making sure that the sword was undamaged, he quickly put it away. His eyes revealed an extremely kind gaze as he pointed to his stall and said, You two, let's take a look. there are still many good things.